Gedney.
Here.
Director Grajeda.
Here.
Director Hawkins.
Here.
Director Oscui.
Here.
Director Vasquez. President Apodaca.
Here. Director Hawkins will lead us in the invocation, and Director Stewie in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for all the blessings you've bestowed upon us. Please watch over Central Basin as we go through some tough times here. Please give us the courage and the knowledge that we need to pull her out of all the problems that we've had. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please face the flag, put your right hand over your heart, and repeat after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments and presentations we had.
We have no public comment cards. We do have two presentations. Mr. Chris Alvarez, can you come up here, please? I want to congratulate Chris for, believe it or not, 10 years of service. You look too young to pull that off. But he's topped only by Sharon Kumar. Service. Thank you very much. That concludes presentation.
Item 3, walk-on items. Do we have any?
No walk-on items.
Item 4, MWD activities update.
Okay, good morning, Board of Directors. I have a couple of items. Want to just provide an update on Metropolitan activities update. The Board approved the biannual budget for fiscal year 2018-19 and 2019-20. The fourth budget workshop was held on Monday, April 9th. They approved their budget and the 10-year forecast for financial rates. The overall rate increase averages out to be 3% each year. And in breaking down the different levels of the water service, the untreated rates for replenishment water will increase by 5.2% in January 2019 and 3.3% in January 2020. The treated Tier 1 rates will increase by 3.4% in January 2019 and 2.7% in January 2020. So this information has been provided to retail agencies of Central Basin that use imported water. So we have provided this information to them. A couple other items, the water efficiency program modification. Their board approved several updates to the conservation program. And this is a result of a peer review process, several months of workshop with member agencies and input from their board members. Some programs have been extended and others are new, such as a landscape transformation program. And these new programs will become effective after July 1st. Additionally, there is a new program to increase water use efficiency in disadvantaged communities. This will be included in the near future. Metropolitan will need to continue working with member agencies and board members to structure this portion of the program. So moving forward, Metropolitan will be working with member agencies to update their member agency allocated funding contracts to include this new information. And we will be providing more detailed information on all of these programs at our Water Resources Committee, scheduled for Monday, May 7th. And lastly, the California Water Fix, the board authorized to fund additional financing and funding arrangements for the project of up to 64.6% share of overall capital cost. This included the general manager's authority to execute joint powers agreements informing the construction and financing the JPAs to allow for governance structures with the member agency participation. And they authorized funding of up to $86 million for further contributions with study, planning, engineering, and other pre-construction capital cost. This will be subject to reimbursement agreement with DWR to provide repayment on the first bond issuance. And they authorized the general manager to negotiate draft terms and conditions for transfer supplies of the State Water Project. So those were the three major items that happened at the board meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions, anyone? If not, Director Gandy, do you have anything to add to that?
Just an update. We had a very successful trip this weekend to Hoover Dam. Very diverse group of folks went to that, and one of the things that was pointed out during the Hoover Dam fix was the history of the dam, the construction of the dam. We did a very brief tour. The second day, we also went back and looked at the Parker Dam, and it was ironic to note how long ago that was and the thinking that went into building that dam, but also the funding of that dam and the aqueduct and the fact that Metropolitan took that all on their own. And so I don't think that fact was lost on a lot of the people who participated, is the impacts and the effects of Parker Dam now many years later in the California or the Colorado River Aqueduct, and the vote taken recently on the Twin Tunnels. So it was kind of interesting to see that dichotomy over a 70, 80-year period, the effects and the impacts from Parker Dam and what Cal Water Fix might look in the future. And so a lot of folks caught that on their own, and I made sure to talk about it in my brief presentation Saturday afternoon. So a very good trip.
Thank you. Consent calendar, items 5 through 15. Does anyone have any item they want pulled?
Item 15, please.
Isn't it all the way to 15?
Yes.
Yeah.
Last item.
I'd like to pull 7 for a question and 8 for a statement.
Okay, 7. Okay.
And with that, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as submitted.
Second that.
Roll call.
Director Chaconne. Director Gedney.
Yes.
Director Grajeda.
Yes.
Director Hawkins.
I want to abstain on the legal bills, and then yes.
Director Oscui.
Yes.
Director Vasquez. President Apodaca.
Yes. Okay, we can go back to item 7.
On item 7, Mr. Chair, thank you. Question for the Finance Director. Page 38, just my understanding of it, Andrew. Table regarding Table 2 graph expenses. It looks like our expenses for 2018, even though we amended the budget, seem higher than the expenses for 2017. I would think they'd be lower. Because of all the work staff's been doing to cut back expenses.
Is there a certain item in the table, like the engineering
I'm just looking
or
at the graph. I mean, it looks
Just
like every
each and every one?
category, just about every category is higher, except for one.
Well, we're a little bit, if you look at, and my eyes are failing me, so I need to get a little closer here. If you look at the finance, we're actually substantially lower there. And in human resources, we're also lower.
My graph shows finances are higher. Isn't the green the 2018?
The green is the fiscal year 18 amended budget.
Right.
So
Which means
the
we
actual
cut back.
the middle item is the actual spending in fiscal year 18.
So I'm reading it wrong.
Kind
So-
of light blue. The dark blue is then fiscal year 17 spending.
So I'm reading it wrong. So the middle is where we're at right now, the blue, the
Right.
sky blue,
Correct.
in comparison to 2017.
The dark blue.
Okay. So in that regard, we are doing overall better. That's my question. Second thing on consent calendar item 8, regarding the contracts report, I'd like this contracts report to come before the engineering committee so we can discuss it. Okay? That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Item 16. 15.
Got a couple of questions.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. No,
Item 15.
I didn't hear 15, that's why, I'm sorry.
That's all right. May I?
Yeah.
Thank you. Question, Kevin. City of Santa Fe Springs requested additional 8 inches of base material when, I guess, we're in the process of paving the street. Did they get a chance to review the plans, and as part of issuing your permits, they had reviewed?
Yes, they did.
So then afterwards, they came back and asked for additional items to be included,
Robin
correct?
can give you the sequence of
Yeah, during the design process, we send the plans to the city and to their transportation department and their water department as well to look at them. They gave us comments on the separation of the pipeline from their water pipeline, and they also gave us a lot of comments on their traffic control. But other than that, pretty much everything was standard, and yeah.
Did they sign off on the plan?
No, everything was. Oh, they signed up on the traffic control plans. They didn't sign up on the actual the entire package. What they did is they just gave us email approval saying that these are all our comments. We don't have anything else. So that was it.
One suggestion is to have them actually sign on the block.
That's a good idea.
So that if we go back and then ask for additional stuff, they'll pay for it, and we don't end up paying for it. The other question is, if I were to calculate the soft costs as a percentage of construction cost, I come to about 23.6%, 24%. Is that our standard for soft cost?
It's a little higher. Usually for a small project like this, it would be 15 to 18, but not.
And the design is about 15.4%. That appears to be a little high to me too for design.
Yeah. And in this one, we actually saved money because the actual inspection was done by our
Infomark, yes.
Infomark, our operations.
But there's a line item for that too.
Yeah.
I mean, they charge money, so.
Actually, no.
Yeah, there's 18,660.
Yeah, and Jackie could probably help me with this, but the reason why we have that, it's already part of their contract. The only reason why we add it is because it will be cost that we could capitalize, but it's already included as part of their cost. It's not additional cost to us. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
They agreed to do inspections like this as part of the hours that, remember, when they proposed, they were 4,000 hours.
Well, that's part
extra.
of the M&O contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're doing that as part, we just broke the time out here so as we can capitalize that. It comes off the operations budget then.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve consent calendar items 7, 8, and 15.
Second that?
Roll call.
Director Chekulun, Director Gedney,
Yes.
Director Grajeda,
Yes.
Director Hawkins.
Yes.
Director Osculi.
Yes.
Director Vasquez, President Apodaca.
Yes. Item 16, the selection of a financial auditor.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Before you is a potential selection of our financial statement auditor. Our previous auditor had a 3-year contract along with 2 additional 1-year options, which we extended the first of those options. And the total cost approximately per year was approximately $25,000, between $25,000 and $26,000. So staff feels it's time to make a change in auditors for various reasons. The district issued an RFP in February, and due to the outreach of the district staff, we received 10 different proposals. When we queried and asked, how did you propose, we received 3 responses. 40% of the proposers that actually replied said that they received information about the RFP at the CSMFO conference. Another 40% saw it on the CSMFO website, and another 20% saw it on the district's website. So I thought that was useful information. So from those 10, we had a review process and whittled those down to 5. As you can see in the staff report, the top 5 are listed in a table. And the highest score was a 94 by the Poon Group. They're actually here in the audience today, a representative. And after this interview, staff recommends selection of the Poon Group as the financial statement auditor, Some of the reasons why: they had advanced knowledge and implementation in GASB 68, above and beyond what some of the other proposers had done. They have advanced software to detect fraud and other testing procedures. They're willing to help and assist staff in some of the GASB 68 and 75 calculations. They do conduct free seminars to train in person, and they had the best presentation. So with that, the recommended action is the board authorize the GM to enter in a contract for audit services with the Poon Group at a cost not to exceed $87,512 for fiscal years 2018 through 2020, with 2 optional 1-year renewals. And that concludes my presentation. Answer any questions.
Questions, anyone?
Mr. President, I just want to commend the staff. Anytime you put out an RFP, you get 10 responses. You've done a wonderful job, so thank you for that.
That's right.
For outreaching. So with that, Mr. President, go ahead.
So Andrew, how many reference checks did you make on the Poon Group?
We contacted at least 2 or 3 other agencies.
Of the list that they provided you?
Yes.
2 or 3 or 2?
I believe it was 3.
Okay. Were they agencies like us, or mostly cities, or were they?
Water districts.
Water districts? I don't have any questions.
Mr. President, I move that we authorize the general manager to enter into a contract for audit services with the Poon Group for 3 fiscal years, starting fiscal year 2018, going through fiscal year 2020, for an amount not to exceed $87,512.
And I'll second that.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez? President Apodaca?
Yes. Item 17, discussion and adoption of a resolution number 04-18-944, adopting a debit management policy.
Yes, thank you very much. We have a small presentation. In essence, effective January 1st, 2017, anyone who issues debt, a state, local, special district, must adopt a debt management policy prior to issuing debt. That's Senate Bill 1029, which was effective 9/12/16. Some items in the debt management policy are providing a policy overview, any of the standards and things that are required to issue debt, the criteria for financing or refinancing, and methods of issuance. In addition, communication with the market, including Standard & Poor's, debt administration, including the required annual disclosures and internal controls. And that is attached to your packet. So adoption of the policy is required prior to us issuing any debt or refinancing any debt going forward. And with that, the recommended motion is that the board approve, adopt, and authorize the president to sign resolution entitled "A Resolution of the Board of Directors of Central Basin Municipal Water District Adopting the Debt Management Policy." That concludes my presentation, and I can answer any
I have a
questions.
question. This is a question only, because as I was reading this is a debt management policy that's going into our admin code. I'd like to keep our admin code as clean as possible. Is this a one-time situation, and should it have a sunset clause, or is this something that will be carried forward for any future? I don't know.
This is a separate policy. It's not part of our admin code.
It's
a
not,
separate
okay,
policy.
okay, I'm okay then. I thought it was going into the admin code. Okay.
Any other questions?
Do you have a second?
Was it a first? Was it a motion?
No, I didn't hear any.
I'll move.
Okay, a second. Second. Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez? President Apodaca?
Yes. Thank you. Item 18, authorization for sole source contract award to a Stradine, Yeager, Carson, and Roth, and not to exceed the amount of $99,000 for the bond counsel and restate services. Am I pronouncing this right, or can you pronounce it?
Very close.
Okay.
Very close. So again, I'm here before you to talk about this agenda item. The Board of Directors in March explored refinancing options with the knowledge that the letter of credit, the LOC, was scheduled to expire in June. We received notification approximately a month and a half ago that U.S. Bank, our letter of credit provider, was only going to extend for approximately the next 6 months. So with that, a certain urgency was upon us to extend the letter of credit or explore these refinancing options. The board engaged a financial and selected a financial advisor. The board also selected an investment banker / underwriter. And this item is really the last component of the financing team, the bond counsel and some related services. About Stradling's experience, they have nearly 3 decades as being the bond counsel for Central Basin. They're very familiar with the district's finances. They've been involved and been the bond counsel for the 3 outstanding bond issuances that we currently have in place, the 2008s, the 2010s, and the 2016s, and obviously have done prior issuances also. And one additional item is rating agencies really favor the continuity, so that would be another item. The financial transaction that we have, this 2008 bond, which we'll hear more about coming up in the letter of credit, in the letter of credit extension, and also in the information item, is a complex transaction. So there's additional reasons why someone who's familiar with the district and has that understanding of this complex financial transaction can step right in and help us. The cost for these services are about a quarter to a third less than what was proposed and we paid in 2016. A little bit about the scope of work. The first item is the LOC extension. The second item is the bond counsel. These are typical things that have been performed in the past. The third item, however, has to do with disclosure counsel. And in the past, the district has paid for this. However, the investment banker / underwriter is usually the one who selects the disclosure counsel. In this situation with our finances the way they are and the experience and the history that we have, the financial advisor gave us advice that we actually select the disclosure counsel. It's a little bit more risky. There's risk involved with where we're at. So even this is an additional item to the scope of work here that Stradling is performing. It is historically been something that the district has paid for just through the underwriter or investment banker. And last but not least, 90% of the services are being paid for and financed through our bond proceeds. So only a little bit of out-of-pocket initially by the district. So with that, staff's recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to execute a sole source contract award to Stradling Ilka, Carlson Roth for bond counsel and related services for a not to exceed amount of $99,000 for a 1-year term effective April 23rd, 2018. And the principal, Doug Brown, is in the audience if you have any questions. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, anyone? Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I would like to move for the board to approve the recommended motion by staff.
Second.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez? President Apodaca?
Yes. Thank you. Item 19, approval of a 6-month extension letter of credit with the U.S. Bank for the 2008 Certificates of Participation COP debt.
Thank you. So before you, I believe you have 2 handouts. Unfortunately, the terms of this potential extension and agreements have not been finalized, so these are draft documents that are subject to change. We're hoping to finalize shortly. However, there's just a few small, hopefully, outstanding items. Again, they're really to protect the district, so those are the items that are outstanding. So we do have another presentation for this. In 2008, as you all are aware, the district issued variable rate debt. There is a letter of credit, or LOC, that's required for this variable rate debt. There was a synthetically fixed, the interest rate. So even though you might hear variable, we're actually paying a fixed interest rate. I'll show that in the next slide, of approximately 3.3%. And it did initially save the district money. Again, it is a complex financial transaction. So this slide graphically shows how the letter of credit really works in the overall 2008 bonds that we've issued. If you look at the top left and start at Central Basin and go to your right, number 1, you can see U.S. Bank as the next entity. They're our letter of credit, or LOC provider. And then as you go continue further, money from Central Basin goes to the letter of credit and then goes to our bondholders. That's how our interest is paid on a weekly basis. If you go up and down, you can see the swap transaction that was that synthetic fix that I mentioned earlier. So we pay 3.3% in item number 3 going down. Going up is the variable rate we receive from city, and that offsets, in theory, number 1, is the structure of this 2008 bonds. So the current letter of credit, the LOC, it does expire in June with U.S. Bank. U.S. Bank recently informed the district, as I've mentioned, that they are only offering a limited extension with the intent not to renew any further past the 6-month period. They're increasing the rate from 1.71, 25 basis points, to 1.96, and they've mentioned mostly due to the financial situation and our not meeting the DCR, the required 1.15%. It is the financial advisor's recommendation of the district. They're here in the audience for the information item and also for this agenda item. We also have bond counsel too. They recommend the LOC renewal with the terms and conditions that we've initially negotiated. So again, with the agreement before you, the 2 attachments in front of you in hard copy, it is staff's recommendation to approve, adopt, and authorize the president to sign the resolution entitled Resolution of the Central Basin Municipal Water is to direct the general manager to execute the LOC extension documents when approved by council. With that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, anyone?
Andrew, you said that the representatives are here in the audience?
Yes.
I'd like to speak with them.
Sure. Would you like the financial advisor?
The one that's recommending that we go forward, yes.
Yes. His name is Robert Poor, and he's a principal with Philner Law.
Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Director.
So, we need to do this? There's no other way of getting out of this?
That's correct. The current letter of credit expires at the end of June. And because of the mechanics built into the deal from 2008, you would have to give notice by early June if you were not going to have a renewal letter of credit or renewed this letter of credit or had a new letter of credit. So with the timing that we have, or that we're facing, the recommendation is to go with U.S. Bank to extend this letter of credit. We also think because of the credit situation of the district, it would be extremely difficult to get another bank to step in.
What do you mean by timing with a letter of credit? You mean we were supposed to give them notice some time ago?
No, my understanding is staff contacted them in sufficient amount of time.
How do we prevent ourselves from getting into this kind of a situation, Robert?
Well, that's part of the next presentation, but one thing that we're looking at as part of our assignment from the district is to look at fixed rate debt as opposed to floating rate debt. And we have an agenda item coming up, I think, very soon. We'll go into details with respect to the background of the 2008 deal and what we're proposing going forward.
Did you look at the resolution we just recently passed? Did you have a chance to look at that regarding the debt policy?
We looked at the resolution. We did not look at the debt management policy, though.
I'm just curious if that's strong enough language in our recently passed debt management policy that would help prevent us from getting into this situation again.
And actually, one of the members of the team for Field Mineral Up, he's also in the audience, Paul Pender, helped draft the document with revisions from staff, so he's available if you have any questions.
Could you answer that question?
Well, I think...
Can he or can I? I didn't hear you, sorry.
Can he answer that question?
Yes.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
His name is Paul Pender, again with Field Mineral Up.
Yes. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
The debt policy does not specifically address variable rate debt or letter of credit extensions, to my knowledge, correct?
My concern is...
I'm sorry. It is meant to be a best practice, right?
Yes.
It does not include particular covenants or fine prints of an agreement that you have with a financial institution.
That's right. It's at a higher level.
It's a higher level.
Yeah.
So the reason that we didn't, we could not extend the letter of credit is because one of the covenants was 115% debt ratio. Quite frankly, we didn't meet that, and that's why they choose not to extend it. So the answer is we have to do better in managing our finances.
But if I might make a suggestion, I think Director Grajeda brings up a good point, and we don't want to put a Band-Aid on the situation right now with what we're doing and then end up in the same situation in the future. So I think what we should do this summer is actually have a workshop on our financial policies. We'll have more time to explore some of the details. We'll have the team working with us. We'll be in the middle of the transaction. I think we come up with some maybe tighter financial policies than what we had in the past, better checks and balances. I mean, this happened a long time ago. 2008 is 10 years ago, and it has saved us money, but it was speculative. It's one of the things when I first came here, I asked, how can we get out of the variable rate debt? Because it's a ticking time bomb. But the other is, we have not, and that's my fault, we have not paid the due deference to the meeting our debt covenant ratios. We need to do that going forward, and that's what the structure you're going to hear about later on is for. But I think this summer maybe we'll have just take a couple hours of the board time and maybe take a couple other later on. It's going to take a while to go through and understand it all. But I'd like to make sure that when we're done with this financial transaction and the bonds are refinanced, that we're on a solid footing and solid policies for years to come.
And that's really my questions, sir, is this law came out because of a need for policies that weren't out there. And my concern is that going forward, and everything, I believe in everything that we're doing, but I wanted to hear from you gentlemen. You took the time to come out here. We should give you a chance to speak up. But I want to make sure that this policy has enough teeth in it going forward that we don't get caught like this again. And hopefully we won't look into variable rates But that was my question. So you looked at the policy and it's just, we could probably make it stronger. Or you don't think it's needed to be stronger?
It's in terms of if you want to put more strict limitations on what the district could and cannot do in the future, that's something you could look at.
Okay.
I think this is a policy that addresses bigger picture issues as far as why the district looks at debt, what the purposes of the debt would be, how that integrates into your capital plan, and it also talks about basic administration and monitoring of those debt proceeds and how you're going to do that going forward, which is part of complying with the recent legislation.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And just one other item, I think you kind of referenced the LLC timing, and so in the next presentation, the information item presentation rather, we will explain the options that we've looked at as it's related to the LLC extension. So to kind of further answer your question, just stay tuned.
Not to beat a dead horse, forgive me, but and we can always improve on the language and make it more strict. But essentially the policy, page 199, says the district will evaluate financing for each capital project on a case-by-case basis. The district will seek to pay for all capital projects from current revenues and available reserves prior to or in combination with the use of debt, but more importantly, the district will seek to issue debt only when there is an identified source of repayment. Debt will be issued to the extent that, 1, projected fixed revenues are sufficient to pay for the proposed debt service together with all existing debt service covered by such fixed revenues, and 2, additional projected revenues have been identified as a source of repayment. So there is enough language, restrictive language in here, prescriptive, but we can always add to it and improve it.
I'll make a motion for to approve items 19.
Second that.
Second. Roll call.
Director Cheklon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Here.
Director...
Yes.
Okay. Director Oskouyi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez? President Apodaca?
Yes. Thank you. Item 20, San Gabriel River Water Master stipulation to replace Central Basin Municipal Water District, City of Long Beach, and the City of Compton with the Water Replenishment District of Southern California.
Good morning, Mr. President. Before I begin my comments, let me correct an error in the recommendation. The case number that's listed on the slide and in the board memo is incorrect. The case number is actually 722647, so the last digit should be 7 instead of 6, and I'll correct that again when I get around to reading the motion, but I want to make sure I didn't forget that, and I apologize for that error. So let me explain what this is and why we're recommending that we transfer this responsibility to WRD. The San Gabriel River Water Master was set up pursuant to some litigation that occurred in the late 1950s and early 1960s, brought by Long Beach, Central Basin, and Compton. And what it in essence does is divide the flow of the San Gabriel River between the upper area, which is the area north of Whittier Narrows, and the lower area, which is the area down here. And then that water then, of course, becomes the water that WRD uses to replenish the groundwater basin for the benefit of those who pump groundwater in WRD's service area. So this judgment and this water master benefit WRD. It's providing the water that WRD is using to replenish the basin. Yet, because WRD did not yet exist in 1959 when the original litigation was filed, we stepped in and represented our service area along with Long Beach and Compton, which are the other two Met member agency groundwater pumpers in what's called the lower area. So we've been contributing to this water master we're now in year 55 of this administration of this water master that is benefiting WRD. And the costs have gradually risen over time to where now the cost is a little over $200,000 a year for the water master to produce their annual report, which is what this is. And then those costs are equally divided between the upper area, which pays 50%, and the lower area, which pays 50%. And then those costs are further split between us and Long Beach and Compton. So our current cost for the last couple of years has been running between $83,000 and $87,000 for Central Basin to, again, benefit really the WRD and the groundwater producers in this area. So when and that's really what we talk about a lot in the water business, is that a beneficiary of something should pay for it. It's at least clear to me that the beneficiary of this is not Central Basin Municipal, it's WRD. And so that's the proposal that's before you. And all four parties are in agreement. The three existing plaintiffs, Central Basin, Long Beach, and Compton, have all agreed with WRD to transfer that responsibility from the three original plaintiffs to WRD. And so what would happen is the stipulation which is attached to your memo would be submitted to the court by the three plaintiffs. And then after that's hopefully accepted by the court, then WRD would enter a motion to actually amend the judgment and to replace Central Basin, Long Beach, and Compton with WRD, including accepting the financial responsibility that we now bear. So that's the item before you, is to authorize the general manager to sign the stipulation along with Long Beach and Compton and begin this process. So with that, I'll go ahead and read the motion with the corrected case number. So the recommended action is that the board authorize the general manager to execute the stipulation to Los Angeles Superior Court case number 722647, City of Long Beach et al. Versus San Gabriel Valley Water Company et al., replacing Central Basin Municipal Water District, City of Long Beach, and City of Compton with the Water Replenishment District of Southern California. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah,
Question. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure that we're not giving up any future assessments or any future water consignments or anything that might be connected to this that we might have with our recycled water, with our potable water.
Nothing that I can see. The benefit of this,
I can't either.
The benefit this totally accrues to WRD for replenishing the basin. I can't see.
Because it seems like we're giving up, but I don't know.
We're giving up an $88,000 bill.
Exactly, and I don't know if we're giving up any benefits.
I'm not sure we're
or
giving up anything else.
Any future benefits, yeah.
We're playing the role of water master.
We're paying Water Master for water that goes to WRD.
Right.
We're paying infinite dollar per acre foot for this water. Yeah. Because we're getting zero water and paying $85,000 a year roughly for it. So I don't see any benefit that we're getting.
That's what I was looking for.
Kevin, quick question. How long is this process going to take in your estimation? Best guess.
Well, I think we can get this done before the next fiscal year, which, if there's no opposition, which again, we're the three plaintiffs are the only parties in the lower basin that have standing, and the three plaintiffs are all going to stipulate that we support this. So I would think that the stipulation going forward will be pretty quick. Our attorney might want to opine. But if there's no opposition, then I would think quickly after we file the stipulation and it's approved, then WRD can enter their motion. And so we're hopeful that we can get this done before the next fiscal year, which is October 1st, and that WRD would take on this expense starting October 1st. But I don't know, the attorney may have an opinion.
I would think 3 or 4 months. I mean, I don't anticipate any opposition.
We're not aware of any opposition. We've discussed this with the upper basin parties. They're fine with it from what we can tell. So we don't expect any opposition that we're aware of.
Kevin, did you have to speak to the water rights panel on this issue at all?
Not to the water rights panel. We've spoken to the CBWA, as you know, and to our purveyors, and nobody expressed any concerns. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
it's not. This is separate from the groundwater adjudications. This has nothing. I mean, I know it's connected, but it's not part of the adjudication for pumping from the Central Basin. That's a separate judgment.
I see this as a water master issue, and I see the fact that this water is going to replenish the groundwater in the basin, the Central Basin, and I see that where WRD's responsibility is to replenish the basin, it makes sense that this would go over to them as water master. So I don't see a problem with this. I think it's a great idea. I'll make a motion to go along with staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Second.
Mr. President, I just want to make a comment. Mr. Hans, Mr. Waddy, thank you very much. This was first discussed back in January as one of the cost savings items, and I want to emphasize the fact that also the Purveyor Group was focusing on this as a potential option for the district to save something around $88,000. So thank you very much for the work.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Director Chuckwan? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oskouyi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez? President Apodaca?
Yes. Thank you. Item 21, consideration to take a position on legislative bills.
Alrighty, good morning, directors. We are asking you to take a position on 3 bills. We'll be providing some context for you via the additional slides. Well, thank you very much. The first bill is Senate Bill 623 by Bill Monning and a budget trailer bill by the governor, which is closely associated with this bill. This is called the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund. There was a request by Aqua to take an opposed unless amended position. Following up our conversation at the Communications Committee, we did reach out to other parties to see where they were at on this bill. This is also opposed by MWD, the Central Basin Water Association, and the League of Cities. One of the major issues being dealt with over the past several years has been access to safe drinking water. As stated, this bill is Senate Bill 623, authored by Senator Bill Monning from the San Luis Obispo and Santa Cruz counties. There is support for the concept of the bill to be able to provide access to clean drinking water to those communities in need. There is concern over the funding mechanism, in particular with respect to a water meter fee. As we state on the PowerPoint, it would impose fees on water, fertilizer, and dairy. The fund would provide for grants, loans, contracts or services to applicants for those water districts needing this type of support. The total current need is currently estimated at $140 million. Of that, $30 million would come from the agricultural fee, $110 million would come from the water meter fee. Oh, wrong way. So just to give you some background on the safe and affordable drinking water fee, because that's what's been of interest to members within the water industry, it would institute a per meter charge from 95 cents per month to $10 per month, dependent upon size. We are looking at, so imagine with over 314,000 service connections in the Central Basin Service Area, what that cost would be. It would require the collection of the fee by the public water system. Then that public water system would then be required to remit the fee back to the state. There would be exemptions with respect to recycled water connections, and also for individuals who could attest that they fell under the federal poverty limit. So with regards to what the recommendation from the water industry is, to, instead of instituting a per meter fee on retail agencies, is to use federal drinking water funds, general obligation funds. There's been a few water bonds that have been recently passed and that are in the queue, and also to maintain the assessments to the agricultural industry. This is a bill that requires a 2/3 vote, and what I'll do is, this is one of 3 bills that is staff is making a recommendation for. The recommendation for this would be an oppose unless amended, which would remove the safe and affordable drinking water fee as it relates to retail meter charges. The next bill is Assembly Bill 2050. There was a request for support from the Eastern Municipal Water District called the Small System Water Authority Act. As stated, there's a request from Eastern, also sponsored by California Municipal Utilities Association. One of the themes that we see going on is the addressing issue of access to safe and reliable drinking water. Background for this is that there are nearly 800,000 people in California that lack access to safe and reliable drinking water. As of February, there are over 300 water systems that would chronically serve contaminated drinking water, cannot provide reliable water service due to unsound infrastructure, a lack of managerial, financial, or technical resources. We did look into this. There are none within the Central Basin service area. The way that this bill would work is the last bullet states that it merges non-compliant water systems into a larger and more robust public water system, but there is a process. The State Water Resources Control Board would notify those systems. There'd be an opportunity to develop a compliance plan. If there was an inability to develop the compliance plan, the local LAFCO process would be initiated. For counties in which there were 5 or more non-compliant systems, there would be the development of an authority. This bill recently passed out of the Assembly Committee on Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials on a 5-2 vote. It has now been referred to the Assembly Committee on Local Government. The recommendation for this would be a support position. And then lastly would be Assembly Bill 2064, the Disadvantaged Community Grants Bill. This is sponsored by the San Diego County Water Authority. This builds on a bill by Senator Lara that was signed into law a few years ago, which would have advanced funds from IRWM grant-funded projects up to 50% of those funds, provided that that project would be a nonprofit, a disadvantaged community, or a project that benefited a disadvantaged community, and also provided that the project was a less than $1 million. There was unanimous support for this bill in the Assembly Committee Water, Parks, and Wildlife. It's now on its way to the Assembly Committee on Appropriations. Essentially, this bill would provide for advance payment for the second half of that project, with regards to having to meet specified conditions. So if an agency would have to meet the milestones within the first 50% of funding to be able to receive the second 50% of funding. And the idea is that there are projects that are benefiting that are led by nonprofits or benefit disadvantaged communities. Well, it's great to help them get up to speed with regards to the first half of the project. A lot of times these organizations have cash flow issues with regards to maintaining the second half of the project. And unless there are any questions, the recommendation which we had presented at Communications Committee, we also had the opportunity to present this at the last Purveyor workshop, is that the Board of Directors take an opposed unless amended position on Senate Bill 623 and the Budget Trailer Bill, take a support position on Assembly Bill 2050, and a support position on Assembly Bill 2064.
On these 3 items, do we vote individually or all at once?
All at once.
All at once?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I have some questions before we proceed. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. We'll start with last things first. My first question, 2064, how many of these projects have we realized in Central Basin? In other words, as I look at these IRWM projects, how many of these occurred in Central Basin? How many have we seen here?
We're doing 2 right now.
Okay, what are those?
One is the Gateway Recycle Water Projects, and the second is what we call the Southeast Water Conservation Project, which is where we provide conservation material to public facilities in the service area.
Okay. So the impact of this would be to fund that last half of the project, right?
The one that would help us is on the Gateway Project, which that is totally for disadvantaged communities, 3 disadvantaged communities. So if we would go for funding through that, it would help us on that.
Okay. So again, there's not a lot of information here, so we're asking these questions. It may be on the third item, AB 2064, may be premature to take a support position. So let me go to the second item, AB 2050. I do have quite a bit of background on this. I would ask why the authors are not considering consolidation as a process to help disadvantaged communities, systems not able to meet drinking water standards. As I understand this legislation, what it would do would basically cherry pick systems in a geographical area, form a special district of some kind without consideration if there might be a city nearby, a mutual water company nearby, an investor-owned water company nearby, or even a wholesale agency that might want to take these on.
My apologies.
So go ahead. I just don't understand why they would not go and look at consolidation first as opposed to going to this special district.
Well, because the issue of consolidation has already been visited upon by the State Water Resources Control Board, and that would be like an alternative for them to visit if this isn't considered a fix-all issue. If consolidation was a better approach, they're recommending that.
Well, except it's my understanding they're not saying that in the language. That's been rejected. It's given lip service and rejected. And so I have some concerns with that. I also have concerns with kind of the general perspective that the only way to correct this problem is with the formation of a special district. And I know by personal experience that is not the only way to correct problems as they occur. So, I'll let other questions be asked, but I would, as the president has hinted at, maybe we break these all out into three different votes. But I can't support this with AB 2050 in the package. So I would not support that.
I appreciate that.
The board can also take, if they prefer to take separate motions on the items, they can.
Joseph, who's supporting 2050 right now besides the two you mentioned?
Let me look this up real quick, Director. 2050. I would have to get back to you because those are the only two that I have listed right now in my legislative matrix, Director.
And who are the two again?
Eastern Municipal Water District
and CMUA, California Municipal Utilities Association.
And who's supporting 2064 besides San Diego?
Give me 1 second, Director. As of now, that's the only listed support that I have.
Mr. President, I would make a motion that we take both AB 2050 and AB 2064 off this recommended support and revisit those at a later date as those change over time. So my motion would be to take an opposed position on SB 623 and the budget trailer bill and remove the other two bullet points.
Does anyone have any other comments?
I'll second it.
If that's a motion, I'd second that.
Okay. Roll call.
Director Chekulon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez? President Apodaca?
Yes.
Alrighty, thank you, Director.
Item 22, transition of medical health insurance coverage to CalPERS Health Budget Program and Vision Insurance coverage to Keenan and Associates effective July 1st, 2018.
Yes, good morning, directors. Staff has been looking at ways to save money. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of laryngitis, so I do sound awful. As part of this, we're looking at transitioning our medical plans from Aqua JPIA to PERS Health. By doing this, the district will save approximately $109,000. And we would contract directly with PERS. We looked at that, at the benefit levels, and for the most part, they're about the same when we compare the plans under JPIA and under PERS. To give you an example of the savings, this table here shows you the monthly premiums for the Anthem PPO plan. And on average, we would be saving around $273 per participant each month. This table shows the monthly premiums that we pay currently for the Kaiser HMO under the JPIA and what we would pay under PERS. Though the premiums under the PERS are slightly higher, the overall savings when you look at the total pool of the premiums are still considerably high. And this, you can see this on the estimated savings graph here on this slide. This lists all the plans that we currently offer and the monthly savings, which would be around $9,000, as well as an annual savings estimated at $109,000. With regard to the PERS plan, the PERS Health System is the biggest purchaser in the state of California, and as such, they are able to keep their costs low while providing comprehensive benefit packages. They offer over 28 medical plans, and approximately 113 water districts are currently enrolled. The program is governed by state law, also known as the CalPERS and Public Employees Medical and Hospital Act. And in doing so and making this transition, PERS would allow the district to contribute the same contribution levels as it currently does under the JPIA. The plan transition effective date would be July the 1st, 2018. This slide shows you the similarities and differences under each of the JPIA and the PERS plans. A more comprehensive comparison may be found in the exhibits attached to the staff report. Under the Anthem PPO plan, and I want to make a correction that the staff report said it was the PERS Choice Plan, it's actually the PERS Care Plan. The similarities are here before you, the same out-of-pocket limit, the same cost for copays for emergency visits and pharmacy copays. The main difference under the Anthem PPO under PERS would be that there's a higher deductible of $300 for individual and $400 for family. Under the Kaiser HMO, the main difference is just a slight increase on the visits for office visits. And lastly, the HMO plan, also we see a higher deductible. As part of this transition, the district will be required to contribute a monthly premium for PERS retirees that sign up for their retirement within 120 days from separating from the district. This monthly cost is about $1, is $1 the first year, and increases by 5% from the minimum contribution required by PERS. This year, for calendar 2018, the minimum contribution is $133. Given our current workforce demographics, we anticipate that we will not have any former employees that would sign up at this time and for the next 10 years. 10 years from now, we anticipate that if we do have employees who sign up, the annual cost would be roughly around $3,600, and that is if we have approximately 4 employees sign up. It's a nominal cost compared to the savings that we'll be looking at for the next 10 years. So as part of this process, in order to transition the PERS to PERS Health, the change will be effective July the 1st. The next step is for the board to approve the attached 4 resolutions, which have been reviewed by our general counsel. And we, as staff, would provide formal communication to Aqua JPIA no later than April 30th, 2018. We have to provide at least 60-day notice to JPIA in order to make this transition for an effective date of July 1st. We will conduct an enrollment fair on May the 8th, and we'll make sure that all participants are invited to the fair, as well as ensure that we contact each participant and ensure a smooth transition. Lastly, I want to mention that we also looked at dental and vision options. The district's broker of record, Keenan and Associates, provided quotes for both dental and vision plans. However, the dental options presented did not yield savings. Therefore, at this time, no recommendation has been provided by staff to actually change to a different dental plan. Keenan did present a vision plan that is comparable to what we currently have and will be saving approximately $1,300. Staff also recommends that we transition to iMed effective July the 1st. Unless you have any questions, this concludes my presentation.
Questions? I have some questions. Dina, I'm looking at the rates that you compared. Was it just the JPIA Classic PPO that you compared to CalPERS?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that because everybody here has Classic PPO?
For the most part, that's our most utilized plan.
Because there's other plans that are much lower than that, you know that. For
Yes,
JPA.
Director.
Secondly, and we provide all 4 plans. How many plans do you provide?
We provide 3. The reason that you saw 4 on that table is
No,
because...
how many do you apply? 3 or 4?
3.
Is there an HMO also provided?
Yes, 2 HMOs. There's an Anthem HMO and the Kaiser HMO.
Does the district pay full benefits for the dependents?
Yes.
Was there any discussion to cut that back to 75% or 50%?
No, Director, there hasn't been any discussion.
There was discussion on that, I believe, in January.
What happened in that discussion?
The board voted against it, so we'll bring it back again next year.
Do we have a dental plan right now, or is it self-insured?
We contract through JPIA as well for the dental plan.
JPA is willing to give everything up and just do the dental?
Yes, I have confirmed with them.
Is this motion for this plan predicated on keeping the HRA program?
This is a standalone motion.
Okay. So proving this has nothing to do with the HRA program?
No, the only thing that has to do with the HRA is the reason we're not as concerned about the increase to the individuals is that they can cover their deductibles from their HRA if they wish.
What if the HRA program was brought back and the board voted to take that off?
Then the employees would have increased costs, we know that.
That was all my questions. Thank you.
Mr. President, one quick question. Dina, thank you very much for looking into this and the opportunity to save the district $110,000. The employees may elect to opt out of CalPERS health plans.
That is correct.
What happens if they opt out?
Well, if they opt out, it's because they may have coverage through their spouse or through other means. There's no direct change to the employee as far as the district does not reimburse any funds.
That's what I wanted to go at. Okay.
Yeah.
And currently, does anyone opt out of the plans that are provided?
Currently, in order to be able to have the incentive plan, which are lower discounted premiums, all eligible employees and retirees have to participate.
Right.
So we don't have an opt-out option. Everyone's
That's a
mandatory.
requirement of JPIA.
Yes, we have the option to not have that, but it's a cost savings measure for us.
Okay. But CalPERS doesn't require that.
CalPERS does not require that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. President, I would like to recommend that the board approve the recommended motions adopting the 4 resolutions.
Yes. So the recommended motion before you is that the board approves, adopts, and authorizes the president to sign resolutions 4-18946, resolution 4-18947, resolution 4-18948, and resolution 4-18949, and authorize the general manager to sign all necessary documentation to transition both the medical health insurance coverage to PERS and the vision coverage to JPIA, to Keenan and Associates, effective July the 1st, 2018. And I meant to read Resolution 4-18948.
Mr. President, the motion is on the table.
Second? Second. Roll call.
Director Chacon, Director Gedney,
Yes.
Director Grajeda,
Yes.
Director Hawkins,
Yes.
Director Oscui,
Yes.
Director Vasquez, President Apodaca.
Yes.
Thank you, directors.
Thank you. Item 23, Local Resources Program, Gateway Cities, CEQA document changes. changes?
Yes, sir. Good morning, directors. This item's before you, by myself, I'm sorry. We have a LRP application currently with Metropolitan Water District. One of the requirements that they have is that Metropolitan be listed in specific sections in CEQA documentation. At the time that we did our Gateway Cities project, we did not have the Metropolitan listed in 2 sections on each city's CEQA documentation. For that reason, during the review process, Metropolitan came back and asked us to do an addendum to get them included in order for those projects to qualify for LRP funds. LRP, I'm sorry, is the Local Resource Program. It is a program that Metropolitan offers, which offers per an acre foot a supplement per an acre foot of water sold by the district.
Albert, I don't understand why Met wants this.
Metropolitan wants this because it's part of, it's part of their, in the LRP it's listed as a requirement. Any CEQA documentation, they require Metropolitan to be listed. When I talked to Ray Mokhtari over at Metropolitan, his reasoning behind it is Metropolitan is providing funds, so they want to be listed because if they ever need to use the documentation to show that the district did show they were a member and that they were providing funding for the project.
Albert, thanks for doing this. Is this a new requirement or just an oversight?
It's
an oversight.
Well, I would say both. Actually, to be fair, our first LRP application didn't have the same requirement. When I did the second portion, I did not catch it when we were going through the CEQA portion. So it's not it's a newer requirement. I wouldn't say brand new, but it's a newer requirement.
All right. Just wondering. I just, we went through a previous LRP, and it didn't come up, and so it's a shared oversight, I guess.
Yes, sir. Well, and we did catch it on the UTC project before that documentation got approved. We did catch it there, and we were able to add them in, but we just didn't catch it on the Gateway Cities portion.
All right, thank you.
Quick question, Albert. Thank you very much. We are saying the submittal with La Mirada and Montebello is currently on hold since construction dates are not imminent.
Yes, sir. Because that project is currently considered on hold by the district, there is no construction plan. The reason that we don't want to include that in our LRP is once a LRP agreement is approved, the clock starts there as far as funds that you can receive from it. If we don't do that project over the next 5 to 7 years, we would limit the ability to receive funding on those projects going out further because any agreement that you choose, it's either 15 year or 25 years with Metropolitan.
Thank you. What I wanted to understand is the Montebello project is the golf course project, right?
No, sir. No, sir.
No, that's a different one.
This is the Montebello Hills project. I'm sorry.
Got it. The new development.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Unless there's any questions, the recommended motion is that the board approve adding Metropolitan Water District to each of the CEQA filings for the cities of Southgate, Bell Gardens, and Linwoods in sections 1.2.5, approvals for which this initial study will be used, and section 3.1, part 10, other public agencies who approval is required. There's 3 separate documents. I added just the pages that would be changed. They're 400 pages each. I didn't want to...
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez? President Apodaca?
Yes.
Thank you, directors.
Thank you. Item 24, discussion of proposed strategy and schedule on refinancing Central Basin bonds.
Thank you. So this item kind of brings home a lot of the discussions that we've had today in previous meetings. In essence, our financial advisor has explored 3 potential solutions. They'll detail those. They then look at 2 options further from one of those selected solutions. This involves the 2008 bonds and potentially the 2010, as they will discuss in the presentation. With us is Paul Pender from Robert Poor from Fieldman Rollap, and he will make the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. Paul Pender actually is here in the audience as well. Okay. Just some background with respect to the 2008B COP structure. As we've covered previously, the district issued variable rate bonds. It uses its letter of credit from U.S. Bank as security and liquidity for those COPs. It also draws on that letter of credit every month to make payments to COP holders. So the letter of credit is an integral part of this transaction. On the left-hand side, you have the transaction, the second part of the transaction. It's an interest rate swap agreement with Citibank, where the district pays a fixed rate of 3.32% to Citibank, and it receives a floating rate that is designed over a long period of time to mimic what you're paying to the variable rate bondholders. As we mentioned previously, the letter of credit currently expires in June. Moving forward towards getting a renewal letter of credit with U.S. Bank. U.S. Bank will only renew the letter of credit for 179 days at a higher fee, 1.96% on an annual basis, versus what the district's currently paying, 1.71%. I think we touched on the point that one of the primary reasons the bank is only willing to renew for 179 days is the district's very low DCR at 0.77% for fiscal year 2017. If there were no solution by middle of December, towards the end of December, whenever the 179 days is exactly up, the district would be faced with paying much higher interest rate to the bank and an accelerated repayment schedule. So our goal is to get you out of variable rate debt, move into something that's fixed rate debt. One of the other challenges that the district is facing is it's been downgraded by Standard & Poor's. Its credit rating has been downgraded from AA back in 2013 down to A- in 2017. Actually, the district is on watch, which means there's a heightened level of scrutiny by Standard & Poor's to make sure you achieve your financial performance. Another concern that we have is that if you were to fall below or to BBB, which is only 2 notches away from where you currently are with Standard & Poor's, it would automatically trigger a termination event under the interest rate swap, and you could be compelled to pay Citibank a termination fee. We estimate that fee to be somewhere between about $1.4 and $1.5 million at this point. So part of the overall financial plan is to kind of wall off S&P to prevent any further downgrades, try and stabilize your credit rating with Standard & Poor's to prevent any further downgrades. Again, as I mentioned, one of the primary challenges is to overcome the failed coverage test, or failure of the district to meet its coverage requirement back in 2017. The coverage requirement is 1.15 times your debt service. You achieve 0.77, so it's a significant difference. And part of that leads into the next transaction, the proposed refunding that we're contemplating. We need to we think, shore up the credit and build in some legal features that will give the market some comfort that investors will get paid, give that comfort to the rating agencies that you're taking positive action to shore up your credit. So part of the restructuring goals, obviously we need a long-term solution for the 2008 Bs. There are certain inherent risks in the fact that you have a letter of credit with floating rate debt. You require the bank to renew every 3 to 5 years. There's always a business risk that they won't renew. And then obviously there's a credit concern on the part of the bank. They need to basically approve your credit every 3 years, or whatever the period of the letter of credit is, in order to renew. So we're embracing that now, trying to find out different solutions. We're looking at, and I'll get into this a little bit more in future slides, but trying to reduce overall lower cost of the district in the future. So part of the consideration as well is not only restructuring or refunding the 2008 Bs, would be also looking at restructuring a portion of the 2010 COPs. That's a much larger transaction, is about 23 million of those bonds outstanding. So the restructuring would contemplate giving you more cash flow relief in the next 5 fiscal years in order to build out the recycle system, generate additional revenues off of that system. Also, the plan is to, again, try and stabilize your credit ratings with Standard & Poor's and Moody's, and hopefully build in further financial discipline, greater revenues, try and generate higher ratings in the near future.
Excuse me, Robert.
Sure. Thank you.
2008 COPs, that's 11 million?
I'm sorry?
On your need to solution, the 2008s, is that 11 million?
Yes, 11,390,000.
And the 2010 is how much?
23,100,000.
That's not our total debt though, is it?
That's correct. There are also the 2016 bonds.
How much was that?
They're about 7,240,000.
So total combined is 43, 44?
That's correct.
Yes.
And you're looking at restructuring right now. Up until now, your conversation is to do the 2008, 11 million, and a portion of the 2010?
That's correct. And the reason we're leaving out the 16s right now is the district does not have principal amortization beginning until fiscal year 2023. So part of the restructuring, especially with the 2010s, is to take the principal that is maturing over the next 5 years and basically pushing that amortization out so that the district has nothing but interest-only payments for the next 5 fiscal years. That's why we left out the 2016s. So looking at possible solutions, one of the ideas that we initially looked at was keeping the variable rate debt concept outstanding. We think those are extremely unlikely, so in our discussions with staff, we've pretty much dismissed those early on in the analysis. But we did focus on the right-hand side, refunding the 2008 Bs with parity debt at fixed interest rates, or using subordinate debt at fixed interest rates. An analogy for parity debt versus subordinate debt is thinking of your first mortgage on your home would be parity debt. It's senior, it comes first. Your subordinated debt is more like a second on your house. It gets paid second to the parity debt or to the first mortgage. We think in the end, with the credit enhancement concepts that we've come up with that I'm going to touch on, really only solution 4 is a viable alternative for the district. Oops. One of the concerns we had, and we looked at this and we conferred with the district and council, in order to issue senior lien debt, the district would have had to comply with its debt service coverage requirement in fiscal year 17. Since it did not, you would not meet your existing senior lien coverage, which means you're legally prohibited at this point from issuing senior lien debt. So we've really focused on solution number 4, which is issuing subordinate debt. Our concept with the subordinate debt was to try and come up with additional security enhancements to ensure market access, to ensure investors felt comfortable with the credit at this point, as well as trying to wall off Standard & Poor's from further downgrades. So focusing on the two options from the right-hand side of the previous slide, looking at subordinated debt versus fixed payment debt, the concept that we have, and the lockbox for option number 2, in order to enhance the credit of the district and would be to create a lockbox. And we'll get into further details, but basically the district would contact the county would directly pay the standby assessments directly to the trustee, and the trustee would hold those in trust only to pay debt service to any existing bondholders or future bondholders. That we think gives the district the additional credit enhancement to achieve a refunding that provides cash flow savings, but it does provide negative net present value savings, but significantly better than what we think you would be able to obtain without the lockbox concept.
Robert, right now, what are we using those funds for? Do those funds pay the bond fund's debt, or does it pay other?
It just goes into a general fund.
Right.
So this would take it out of that, put it into a secure thing, solely dedicated to pay that, and then they'll go through it in a bit. At the end of a year, whatever's left in that would be dispersed back to the district, and then it'd start again. But the bondholders would be very secure.
Right.
That's correct. And you'll give the bondholders that comfort when we come to market with the 2018 deal that they will get paid.
Right.
So we think that that's an important credit enhancement that the district needs to take.
It's like making an automatic payment with your credit card. They don't have to worry about the payment coming out.
It's very similar to that.
Okay.
So the second concept that we had was to prepay the debt principal that's coming due on August 1st of this coming year, of 2018. By you defeasing it before June 30th of this year, you get to remove it from the calculation for next year. So it creates greater chance of success that you'll achieve your debt service coverage ratio in next year, fiscal year 18-19. And we'll come back to the district at some point if this is approved and have that documentation approved by the board before the end of June. And then lastly, as I touched on, the primary security enhancement is kind of a fixed payment account or the lockbox account where the county would directly pay to the trustee the standby charges as they're collected. As the county would normally send them to the district, as they do now, we're proposing as they come in, the county send them directly to the trustee. And then as Mr. Hunt mentioned, at the end of the fiscal year, by August 2nd, by the end of the bond year, August 2nd, any monies remaining in that trust fund would be given back to the district. The second concept was to include the fixed meter fees. The district would pay those over into the same trust account as they came in.
What we're talking about here is our per CFS fees. We don't have fixed meter fees. It's a per CFS fee. Thank you.
Thank you for that correction. Robert, the prepaid debt principal due 8/1 in June, what are we talking about? How much money are we talking about?
That's
pulling out of reserves.
Approximately $1.5 million. So yes, you would take that out of reserves. That's our recommendation.
That would drop them down to around $8 million.
What we're actually doing is paying it 2 months early, but it puts it in a different fiscal year, and for some weird legal mechanism, it doesn't hit us in next year's DCR, but because it's a prepayment, it doesn't hit us in this year's DCR. You can only do it one time. So it's a one-time transaction that you can do that will increase our probability of making it next year, but doesn't say anything about the long term. It will help us then with the refinancing of the bonds as a start, but it's just a one-time deal. Is that correct, Reverend?
Yes, that's correct. So literally before, you would normally pay this on August 1st. You were just asking you to pay this before the end of June.
To make us look better when we go in to go for the bond.
Correct. It's going to make your chances of success for 18-19 for achieving your debt service coverage ratio much greater. So just to go into a little bit more detail, currently, all those dollars from the county for representing the standby charges coming into the district. The only difference, if you adopt this proposal, is the money would go directly to the trustee. And the trustee would pay the bondholders, not only the 2,000, and we're recommending that you put this into effect in May or June, so that the 8 deal, the 16 deal, the 10 deal, and the 2018 transaction are all impacted by this. That way you give all the bondholders the same cover, the same security.
We've already been paid the standby charges.
Yeah, I believe did the second payment come in the April one? Yes.
Yes.
We've got both.
So those fees have already been received, but we would put a notice to the county that going forward.
Yes.
Robert, can I ask, so if we were to, do you have an idea of how much we would save approximately by paying the principal, the $1 million up front? I mean, how much would help us look better is what I guess I'm asking.
It is hard to say because we don't know what 18-19 will look like. But taking out about $1.5 million should significantly improve your chances of success. So I think I touched on this with respect to how the lockbox would actually work. But in November, the county folks start paying their property taxes. The counties will collect those dollars. December and January, you'll see significant amounts of those dollars go directly to the trustee. On February 1st, there are interest payments due under all the existing debt. So the trustee will use the standby charges collection and whatever fees are turned over by the district as well into that lockbox will be used to make the interest payment on February 1st. And then as more property taxes are collected and standby charges are collected, those dollars will get remitted again directly to the trustee for a payment on August 1st. That's interest and principal. And then on August 2nd, any dollars remaining in the lockbox will be turned over to the district to use for whatever purposes it deems necessary. This is the district's existing debt service breakdown, the 2008 Bs on the far left. As you see, we've highlighted those in red. We're contemplating, we're not contemplating, we're recommending that all of those be refunded as part of the 2018 transaction. And then with respect to the 2010 COPs, the first 5 fiscal years, which amounts to $4,750,000 of principal, those be restructured. You're currently paying on the far right-hand column, the district's currently paying with letter of credit fees included about $3.5 million per year through fiscal year 2023. Sorry. The first concept, walking through this very quickly, would produce some fiscal year savings for the first 3 or 4 years. There would be a debt service under the $3.2 million through 2023, but then you'd have a bump up in debt service to $3.7 million, and it would stay at about $3.7 million through 2028.
Again,
that's the option without the lockbox.
That's highly it's not very likely that we will get anything without that credit support.
Okay. So with the lockbox structure, we think, again, that's a much more advantageous structure for the district. You'd be able to refund the 2008Bs, restructure that portion of the 2010s, the 4.7 million, and achieve cash flow savings that are significant through 2023. Debt service would max out over that period about $2.7 million, but it would give you certain cash flow relief at that time. Also, out through 2028, debt service would remain at under $3.3 million, which is roughly the amount of standby charges that you'll be collecting each year. And this is a chart comparing the debt service of the district. The blue line is the existing debt service plus the letter of credit fees, or you're about $3.5 million annually out to about 2032, and then it falls off. The red line is the proposed structure with the lockbox, so you've got significant savings because you're paying interest only for that period of time. Debt service does begin to climb up past the $3 million threshold in 23, and then it remains level to about 2028 at about the $3.2 million figure. The other thing I did want to bring to your attention is that in 2020, the balance of what we don't refund with the 2018 structure, the balance of the 2010s will become subject to refunding, subject to call by the district. So there's a refunding opportunity in 2020 to refund the balance, roughly $18.5 million of the 2010s. So we hope that with the added discipline and better financial performance over the next few years, there'll be an opportunity to refund those for savings and potentially restructure that debt as well to try and level out the debt service, so to speak, and trying to avoid that big spike up on the red line. Trying summing this all up, and I'm happy to entertain further questions, the first step would be to implement the letter of credit extension with U.S. Bank, have those documentation approved and finalized by May so that the renewal could take effect in June. Again, we're proposing legal amendments to the existing documentation to include the lockbox, and if this is approved, we'll move forward with amending the existing documents in the 2008, the 2010s, and the 2016, so that the lockbox structure is incorporated to each one of those transactions. Lastly, to include the prepayments of the August 1st debt before the end of this current fiscal year by June 30th. And then work through the restructuring to provide meaningful cash flow to give the district time to build out its recycled water system. Some of the other little mechanics would be to have the audit completed sometime in September, by the end of September, so it could be part of the offering statement of the 2018 bond offering. And then lastly, we're expecting to price and close the 2018 issue in October of this year.
Audit, are you talking about this fiscal year's audit?
Yes, the fiscal year end 18. And
ending June 2018.
Correct. Yes. So we've talked with staff. Staff has made that a priority for the new auditing firm. And it's my understanding that that could be done.
Can that be done?
Yes.
Wasn't done in the past?
It will this time.
New firm.
It's not only that, we are preparing to do the work now that instead of waiting till August. So they're actually getting data together, so when we close a year, it'll close quicker so they can get ahead. We can't put it all on our new accounting firm, but they've been aware of it. We had a nice discussion in the interview, and Mr. Pun's approach was very positive to it. He's in the audience. Do you have any questions?
My question is to Andrew, is it's not been done in the past. Been a couple, 3 months into the new year, so September?
Absolutely. We've been working hard to implement things. Almost everyone's involved in our department in this area, and we've got a great head start so far right now.
So I have a question, Mr. Chair. We're going to be doing a budget workshop? Is that correct? Or we're doing a workshop that's coming up for next year's budget?
For next year's budget, we'll take it through the Finance Committee. We do a budget workshop that board feels are needed. We've done a lot of work on it, as I'll report in just a minute, and we think we're at a place where it's a good negotiations between the retail agencies and us.
Well, I know the minutes reflected that we were going to do a budget workshop this month. I don't think one's scheduled for this month, but I've heard budget workshop. There's a lot of moving pieces all over the place, and my concern is I want to discuss now, how does taking out the standby fee out of the overall budget, how does that how do we look at that and how we're going to...
No, excellent point. But the interesting thing is, in the past, we basically have always said that the standby fee pays for the bonds. Now, with the increase in cost of the letter of credit, it doesn't anymore. But it's a cash flow situation primarily. This will take it out of there, and so there'll be some cash flow management issues, but overall costs are the same. And so at the end of the budget is the same at the end of the year. It will also heighten. And one of the things that since Andrew's been here, we tried to do is, instead of thinking of ourselves as a $60 million because of the pass-through monies, take the pass-through monies out. You've been seeing a real budget now. And this will again take the financial transaction out that has to be met. And again, we'll be concentrating on a smaller, more concrete budget and make it much easier to make prudent financial decisions. It won't be masked by the sheer size of the pass-throughs.
So are we having a budget workshop or not?
So to the board, I was not proposing one for this next month on it. We were going to give the presentation to the Finance Committee and give it to the board on the budget. We think we've gone through a lot of work on it, but again, we can do one if you like.
So the Finance Committee meets the second week in the month?
Yeah.
And everything's going to be in that, whatever you're going to give to the Finance Committee. And then those issues that the board took action, that came before the board, is that going to be included in what you're looking at?
I'm sorry to hear.
Those issues that went before the board
Stuff
on the
today?
12th?
Yeah. And the budget that we're proposing is based upon the approach that we're talking about here. And again, it's both the cost cutting that we've done in prior sessions, the rates analysis that we've done of what the rate should be, and we're pretty confident that we have a budget proposal that has tight enough control on cost, enough increase on rates, because you'd have to have some rate increase because that's what the rating agencies have said they want to see. And it's an unusual thing. We can't cut our way out of this financial situation, even though the debt coverage ratio in one of the alternatives, the alternative 3 that the retail agencies put together said just cut. Actually, you can make your debt coverage ratio, but you won't keep from getting downgraded because your revenues aren't enough to sustain you going forward. But the combination of cuts, a rate increase, and a financial restructuring gives a solid basis going forward. There's a lot of work been done since the first of the year.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 25, update on 2018-2019 budget discussion with retail agencies.
Just a brief discussion of where we are in the budget process, which is a perfect segue to Director Grade's question. We have been working hard both with the retail agencies, with our finance partners, to come up with a budget and a financial structure that meets the district's needs in an appropriate way. We unveiled an overview of it and some of the detail at the Purveyor workshop last week, and reason we haven't presented today, it's too soon to expect them to have a response to it or whatever, so I didn't want to present it to the board just yet until I get feedback on what we presented. But basically, the budget will have approximately a 15% increase in the potable rate, a 4% to 4.5% increase in the recycle rate, a 20% increase, I believe it was, in the per CFS charge. And it will have significant cuts in both programs and personnel, and it will have the restructuring that we're talking about here today assumed as part of us, and a minimalist capital program for next year, but a significant one in years going forward after it. And again, if the board would like to have a workshop on it, I'd be glad to set one up anytime in the next month, or we can do it at the Finance Committee or whichever the board like.
You said you presented something to the purveyors. What was their response, if there was any, to your the information you provided them?
There was no detailed response. They're here in the audience. Some of them were present. They're welcome to come up and speak. I think they still need to look it over. We sent it out to them all the following day. And but again, the way we're going to do it is take it to the Finance Committee, take it to the purveyors again, and assuming the board's okay, we'll take it to the board for approval in May. The reason we like to do it in May is because as a wholesale agency, it's a courtesy to get it done at least a month before your retail agencies have to do theirs. So, any questions, directors? Is there a preference to have a workshop, or is it okay just taking it through the committee?
Individual.
I'm on the committee, so it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, I am too. Maybe you want to say something?
I just, as long as I can ask my questions, and, at a committee level, you only have 3 members there that can ask questions. It's not a board meeting. And I just, I guess I'll try to get my questions to the committee. Maybe the committee can discuss it.
We could turn it into a special board.
Yeah, we can just make it a special board and do that. That's, I think, again, we want to get all the questions answered as openly as possible. So we'll be glad to, if that works for everybody, just turn the Finance Committee into a special board meeting.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay.
That's fine.
We'll do that. Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Did you anything?
No comments.
Okay. General Counsel's report.
For anyone who will be at the Agua Conference in Sacramento, you're all invited. Nasaman is hosting a reception there at Mixed Restaurant in downtown Sacramento, walking distance to the conference, complimentary food and drink and networking with other water industry professionals. So anybody there, feel free to stop by on 15th and L Street at the rooftop on Mixed Restaurant.
General Manager's report.
Just one ad-lib comment. I came upon watching Kevin Wadier's proposal today about the amount of work since the first of the year that both Tammy and Kevin have had to do with the confluence of trying to get this change in the water master through. At the same time, we had the California Water 6 and others. I appreciate the hard work that they did. And Chris did a lot of the analysis for them, so thank them all.
Director's report on meetings and conferences. You have anything?
I talked about the trip to Hoover. Again, a very nice trip. We didn't get any rain like other staff did, perhaps in visits overseas, but had a very good time out on the desert. And again, I think our customers were very, very impressed with what it's taken to get water here. So had a good time.
Director Security.
Nothing, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Grajeda.
Didn't attend any conferences.
Conference. And everybody's talked to us, so meeting's adjourned.
I do have comments.
You have a comment?
Yeah, I do have a comment. You were talking about conferences. I would like to work with staff at the Finance Committee meeting or the special meeting to bring back some of those items that came before the board on January the 12th. I'll work with you on it. I think that we need to discuss those again in the sense that now that we're looking at the overall budget and all the plan that I'm doing, I think it's time to go ahead and take a look at some of those again, see if we can cut more, Kevin. So I do want to see that come back in the workshop or whatever we're calling it. I'll work with you on that. That was it, Mr. Chair.
Meeting's adjourned.